The morning sun filtered gently through the blinds of Emily's tiny apartment, brushing warmth across the stack of graduation cards on her kitchen table. For once, she didn't have to rush anywhere. No late-night work shift, no last-minute study session, no juggling of bills and deadlines. Today was supposed to be hers. The culmination of 6 exhausting years spent clawing her way through college while her family stood by, more as spectators than supporters. She took a deep breath, staring at the pristine white cake box sitting beside her keys. Inside was her graduation cake, simple but perfect. White frosting, gold lettering. "We're proud of you, Emily." She'd ordered it herself, not expecting anyone else to. Still, a part of her hoped that maybe, just maybe, her family would finally see her. Not as the quiet one or Carla's little sister, but as someone who achieved something on her own. Her phone buzzed. "Mom, don't be late. Carla and the kids are already here." Emily smiled faintly. Of course they were. Carla, her older sister, always arrived early, not to help, but to take control. By the time Emily pulled up to her mother's house, her nerves were already tight. The sound of laughter and clinking plates poured from inside, but as she stepped through the door, that warmth quickly chilled. "Finally," Carla exclaimed, perched on the couch like a queen, her designer bag spilling onto the floor. "We were starting to think you flunked last minute," her teenage son Tyler snorted. "Yeah, college must have been easy if even you graduated." Emily's smile faltered, but she brushed it off. "Hi, Mom," she said softly, walking over to hug her mother who was stirring something at the counter. Her mother gave her a quick side hug. "Oh, sweetheart, you look tired. I told you not to overwork yourself with those part-time jobs. You should have done what Carla did. Married early, got some help." The comment hit the same sore spot it always did. Carla smirked, clearly enjoying the dig. Emily set the cake on the dining table. "I thought we could have this after dinner," she said, forcing brightness into her tone. "I picked your favorite flavor, Mom. Lemon cream." "Oh, how thoughtful," her mother murmured absently, already turning back to the stove. Tyler, leaning against the counter, eyed the cake. "That's it? Doesn't look like much of a graduation cake. My birthday cake last year was twice as big." Carla laughed. "Honey, not everyone can afford your taste." Emily's cheeks warmed, but she stayed quiet. She had learned long ago that reacting only gave them more ammunition. Dinner passed in fragments of shallow conversation. Carla dominated the room, boasting about her husband's new business trip, about Tyler's brilliant potential, about how exhausting it was being so successful. Emily listened, smiled, and nodded when needed, even though her stomach churned. When it was finally time for cake, she carefully lifted the lid, the scent of lemon filling the air. "Okay," she said softly. "This part I've been looking forward to." Her mom smiled faintly. "Go on then, make a wish." Emily hesitated. What would she even wish for? Acceptance? Respect? Maybe just peace. She closed her eyes for a brief second, then reached for the knife. But before she could cut the first slice, Tyler's hand shot out. "Hold up," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Let me do it, Aunt Emily. I'm good at this." Carla chuckled. "He just wants to help." "Don't be so serious." Emily froze, torn between politeness and the uneasy feeling tightening in her chest. "It's fine, Tyler. Before she could finish, Tyler grabbed the knife and jabbed it carelessly into the frosting, cutting unevenly, smearing the clean white surface with rough lines. "Tyler!" Emily gasped, reaching forward, but he was already laughing. "Oops," he said, lifting the piece with his fingers and letting it flop back onto the cake. "Guess I'm not cut out for college either." Carla burst out laughing. "Oh, Tyler, you're terrible." Emily's mother sighed. "Don't start drama, Emily. He's just a kid." Emily looked at the ruined cake, her vision blurring for a moment. She swallowed hard. "It's not funny," she whispered, but no one heard, or cared. Tyler grinned, wiping frosting on his shirt. "Relax, Aunt Emily, it's just cake." "You act like it's the end of the world," Emily bit her lip. Every ounce of patience she had was slipping away. This day, her one small victory was becoming another cruel family joke. She forced a trembling smile. "You're right," she said softly, turning away. "It's just cake." But her voice cracked on the word just. Carla, sensing the tension, clapped her hands. "All right, everyone, picture time." She positioned Tyler next to Emily. "Smile." The college grad and her little helper. The flash went off, capturing Emily's forced grin beside the smirking teenager who had just humiliated her. When the laughter resumed, Emily quietly stepped outside, closing the screen door behind her. The cool evening air hit her face, carrying the faint sound of her family celebrating inside, without her. She leaned against the porch railing, her hands trembling slightly. The stars above blurred through her unshed tears. This was supposed to be her day, her moment. But even now, her family had managed to turn it into another reminder that in their eyes, she would never be enough. Inside, through the window, she could see Tyler leaning over the cake again, laughing as he poked at it with a fork. Her mother didn't say a word. Carla was taking selfies. Emily's breath hitched as the laughter echoed through the glass. And in that instant, something inside her, quiet and fragile, began to crack. The porch light flickered above Emily as she stood outside, trying to calm her breathing. Her fingers brushed the thin gold bracelet on her wrist, a small gift she'd bought for herself because no one else had remembered. Inside, the faint chatter continued, muffled through the window. She could hear her mother laughing at something Carla said, followed by Tyler's exaggerated groan. They sounded like a family having fun, except the part where the person being celebrated was standing alone in the cold. She inhaled deeply and forced herself to go back inside. "Don't let them ruin this. It's still your day," she reminded herself, even though the conviction in her voice was fading. When she stepped back into the kitchen, everyone turned for a brief second, then went back to their conversations as if she were invisible. The cake still sat on the table, unevenly cut, the gold lettering now smeared and barely legible. Tyler had scooped some frosting onto his fingers and was flicking it onto a paper plate, laughing with his phone in hand. "Tyler, don't play with food," Emily said quietly. He didn't even look up. "Chill, Aunt Emily. You're so uptight." Carla glanced up from her phone. "Oh, come on, Em, he's a kid. Let him have fun. He's 16, Emily said, her voice shaking slightly. Old enough to know respect. The laughter in the room dimmed for a moment. Carla raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me? Are you implying my son isn't raised right?" Emily's heart thudded painfully in her chest. "That's not what I said. Then what are you saying?" Carla snapped, crossing her arms. "Because it sure sounds like you're blaming my parenting for him not worshiping your precious cake." Tyler snorted. "Yeah, Aunt Emily, it's just cake. Relax." Emily felt heat rising in her cheeks. Every pair of eyes turned toward her. Her mother's disapproving, Carla's defiant, Tyler's amused. Even her father, sitting quietly on the recliner, didn't look up. She could have stayed silent again. She always did. But something inside her, that quiet, aching part that had been ignored her whole life, pushed back. "It's not about the cake," she said, her voice low but firm. "It's about respect. You guys make jokes, you laugh, and you think it's funny, but you don't see how cruel it is. You've done it all my life. Every time I achieve something, you turn it into a joke. And Before she could finish, Tyler groaned loudly and rolled his eyes. "God, you're so dramatic!" He grabbed the edge of the cake plate and, in one sudden motion, flipped it off the table. The cake hit the floor with a dull thud, frosting splattering across the tiles and onto Emily's shoes. Gasps filled the air, followed by stunned silence. For a moment, Emily couldn't move. Her breath caught in her throat as she stared at the mess, the ruined cake she'd bought with the last of her paycheck, lying face down on the ground. Then Tyler's voice cut through the silence, sharp and mocking. "Go on," he said, smirking. "You wanted it so bad. Eat it off the ground." The words hung heavy in the air, sinking into her like ice. Carla laughed, not out of nervousness but genuine amusement. "Tyler, stop it!" she said between giggles, making no effort to sound serious. Emily turned to her mother, desperate for support. "Mom?" she whispered, her voice breaking. But her mother only sighed and said, "Don't make this worse, Emily. It's just a cake. You're overreacting." The room tilted slightly. The disbelief, the humiliation, the sheer weight of it all pressing down on her. She crouched down slowly, her trembling hands reaching for the ruined dessert, trying to scoop it back onto the plate. Her eyes stung. Carla took a picture. She actually took a picture. "Oh my God, Em, stop being so dramatic," she said through laughter. "You're going to make yourself look crazy." Tyler laughed harder. "Look, Mom. She's actually doing it." Emily froze. Her knees were pressed to the tile floor, her hands covered in frosting, surrounded by the sound of their laughter. Her own family's laughter. It was the kind of pain that didn't come from one moment, but from years of being unseen. Every ignored birthday, every dismissive comment, every time she'd swallowed her anger to keep the peace, it all exploded quietly inside her chest. Her breathing slowed. She looked up, her eyes glassy but calm. "You think this is funny?" she said, her voice trembling with controlled fury. Carla blinked, finally noticing something different in her sister's tone. Emily stood up, wiped her hands on a napkin, and took a step back. "You've all made it very clear how little I mean to you, but I promise you, this will be the last time you ever get to laugh at me." Her voice was steady now, too steady. Carla frowned. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. You always say stuff like that." Emily didn't answer. She grabbed her purse, her car keys, and walked to the door. No yelling. No tears this time. Just silence. Heavy, final, unshakable. Behind her, Tyler called out mockingly, "Don't forget your cake, Aunt Emily." She paused for half a heartbeat, then turned her head just enough to meet his smirk with a calm, chilling stare. "You'll remember that cake long after I'm gone," she said quietly. And then she walked out. The laughter faded as the front door closed behind her, replaced by an uneasy silence that none of them knew how to fill. Outside, the night air was cold against her tear-streaked face. But for the first time, Emily didn't feel small. She felt raw, angry, and alive. Somewhere deep inside, something had changed forever. The drive home was a blur of headlights and rain. Emily's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white, but she couldn't feel it. Not really. Her heart pounded in her ears, drowning out the sound of tires splashing through puddles. Every blink replayed the moment Tyler flipped that cake onto the floor, the laughter, the camera flash, the look of boredom on her mother's face. She parked outside her small apartment, but didn't move for a while. The world outside was silent, and yet her mind screamed. Inside the car, she sat perfectly still, her body trembling with all the things she hadn't said. Then slowly she began to cry. Not soft, delicate tears, but deep, ragged sobs that tore their way up from her chest. It wasn't just about the cake. It never had been. It was about every invisible year that had built up to that moment. Every time her mother compared her to Carla, every time her achievements were brushed aside, every time she'd swallowed her hurt to keep the peace. Tonight, they hadn't just ruined her celebration. They'd crushed something far more fragile, her last shred of hope that maybe one day she'd belong among them. When she finally walked inside, her apartment greeted her with quiet emptiness. The small space smelled faintly of the candles she'd left burning that morning. Vanilla and lavender, the only things that ever made the place feel like home. Her graduation cap lay on the table, right beside the unopened champagne bottle she had bought to toast with her family after the dinner. She sat down, staring at the cap. The gold tassel shimmered faintly under the kitchen light, catching the reflection of her wet eyes. Then she picked it up, and it slipped from her shaking hands, landing softly on the floor. Emily laughed through her tears. "Of course," she whispered. "Even you're done with me." She sank to her knees, pressing the cap against her chest. For a moment, she just stayed like that, the quiet hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Then her laughter faded, replaced by something colder, heavier. "I'm done too," she murmured. The next morning, Emily woke up with swollen eyes and a strange clarity. Her sadness hadn't vanished. It had simply hardened. She looked around her small living room, at the stack of unpaid bills, the job applications pinned to the fridge, and the pictures of her family she hadn't yet taken down. Each photo told a story she'd tried to believe in. Birthdays she wasn't really part of, vacations she wasn't invited to, group pictures where she stood at the edge of the frame, smiling to prove she belonged. She stood, walked to the wall, and began taking the photos down one by one. Each soft click of a frame against the table sounded like a piece of her past breaking free. No more pretending. She opened her laptop and typed a resignation letter to the part-time job she hated, the one she'd taken because it was safe and close to home, just like her mother suggested. Then she sent an email to a recruiter she'd spoken to months ago about a firm in another city, a job she had almost applied for, but didn't, because Carla told her it was too ambitious. As she hit send, her chest rose with a shaky breath. It felt like she'd opened a window after years of suffocating. That afternoon, she sat down with her planner and listed everything she wanted to change. Small, real things. Find a new job, out of town. Take a weekend class in photography. Move somewhere near the ocean. Stop calling home just to be ignored. When her phone buzzed later that evening, she saw her mother's name flash across the screen. For a brief second, she considered answering. Maybe her mother would apologize. Maybe Carla had finally realized what they'd done. But she didn't answer. She let it ring until it stopped, the sound fading like the end of something she'd outgrown. The next few days moved like a slow sunrise. Emily started waking up early, cooking breakfast for herself, walking to the park before work. The city noise didn't bother her anymore. For the first time, she felt detached, free, but also strangely empty, as if she were rebuilding herself from dust. One evening, while sorting through her inbox, she found an old message from Carla, from years ago, asking for money to help cover a few unexpected expenses. Emily had sent the money back then without hesitation, even though it drained her savings. She stared at the message for a long time, a bitter smile forming on her lips. You never hesitated to take, but you never gave me even basic respect. Then, she deleted it. Later that night, Emily sat by the window, watching the city lights shimmer in the distance. She thought about how easy it was for her family to humiliate her, how quickly they'd laughed, how easily her pain had become their entertainment. But that night, she made herself a promise, never again. No more silent endurance, no more chasing approval, no more dinners where she sat quietly while they ridiculed her. Her reflection in the window looked different, sharper, steadier. The girl who had picked cake off the floor was gone. What remained was someone who was about to start living for herself, not for them. And though she didn't know it yet, her quiet vow would soon become the turning point of everything that followed. The following weeks unfolded like a quiet rebirth for Emily, slow, deliberate, and almost invisible to anyone but her. Each morning she woke with a new kind of stillness. The sting of that night, the cake, the laughter, the humiliation, was still there, but it had transformed from raw pain into something sharper. Resolve. She stopped calling her mother. She didn't text Carla. For the first time in her life, she didn't explain herself, didn't justify her silence, didn't try to smooth things over. The quiet was uncomfortable at first, but it soon became peaceful, like taking off a pair of shoes that had always been 2 sizes too small. At work, her co-workers began to notice the change. Emily, who used to shrink away from conversations, started volunteering for new projects. Her boss, Mr. Holloway, a patient man with kind eyes, called her into his office one morning. "Emily," he said, flipping through her reports, "you've been doing exceptional work lately. Have you ever thought about applying for a higher position?" She blinked. "Me?" "Yes, you," he said with a chuckle. "You've got the discipline and focus most people lack. There's an opening at our Chicago branch. Management trainee program. I think you'd be a perfect fit, Chicago. The word hung in her mind like a key to a door she hadn't dared to touch. She smiled faintly. I'll think about it, she said. But inside, her answer was already forming. A steady yes. That night, she went home and pulled out a dusty vision board she had made years ago. It was filled with half-forgotten dreams. A photo of Lake Michigan, a picture of a DSLR camera, a quote that said, "Be the woman you needed when you were younger." She ran her fingers over it and whispered, "It's time." Over the next few days, she began to take control of her life with quiet determination. She sold old furniture online, cleaned her apartment until it felt new, and started saving every extra dollar. Each step, no matter how small, felt like a declaration. I'm leaving that old version of me behind. Then, one afternoon, as the first chill of autumn touched the air, her phone rang. Carla. Emily's stomach tightened, but she didn't answer. Seconds later, a voicemail came through. "Em, it's me." Carla's voice trembled. "Look, things have been really bad. Tyler's been expelled. Mark's business collapsed. We're drowning here. I know things got out of hand that night, but we're family, right? Please, can we talk?" Emily listened in silence, her thumb hovering over the delete button. Carla sounded desperate, the same sister who had laughed as her son humiliated her. She let out a slow breath. The old Emily would have called back immediately, would have comforted, forgiven, offered money, help, anything. But that Emily had knelt on a kitchen floor picking cake off the tiles while her family laughed. Not this time. She deleted the message. 2 days later, her mother called. Then again? Then again? When Emily finally answered, her mother's tone was soft. Too soft, almost pleading. "Sweetheart," her mother said, "your sister's going through a lot. Tyler's made mistakes, yes, but he's still a child. Carla needs you. We all need to stick together right now." Emily listened quietly. "You needed me when you wanted something," she said finally. "But when I needed a family, you all watched me get humiliated and did nothing." "Emily, don't be cruel," her mother whispered. "You're better than this." "No, Mom," she said, her voice calm and steady. "I'm finally exactly as I should be." She ended the call. That night, Emily sat by her window, sipping tea, watching the city lights flicker. For the first time in years, she didn't feel guilt eating away at her. The silence from her family no longer felt like punishment. It felt like freedom. Weeks later, she received an email. "Congratulations. You've been selected for the Chicago Management Program." Emily stared at the screen, tears welling in her eyes. Not the broken kind, but the cleansing kind. She packed her bags that night. Every folded shirt, every book she chose to take, felt like shedding a piece of her old life. On her last morning in town, as she loaded the final box into her car, her phone buzzed again. Carla. One last time, against her better judgment. She answered. "Emily," Carla said softly, her voice hoarse from crying. "I'm sorry, okay? For everything. I wasn't thinking that night. He's out of control. I need help, Em. Please." Emily stood in the parking lot, her car keys in hand, the wind tugging at her hair. For a moment, she almost felt pity, the instinctive pull of the old Emily trying to break through. But then she remembered the sound of Carla's laughter, the flash of her camera, the frosting on the floor. "I can't help you," Emily said gently. "You taught me to eat off the ground, remember?" "I just learned to stop crawling." Carla went silent. Emily hung up. Then she slid into her car, started the engine, and drove away, her past shrinking in the rearview mirror as the skyline opened ahead. And somewhere between the town she was leaving and the city waiting for her, she smiled, a quiet, victorious smile that didn't need witnesses. The wind off Lake Michigan carried a crisp chill that bit through Emily's coat as she stepped out of her new office building. Chicago felt alive in ways her hometown never did. Bright lights, fast pace, people with purpose. For the first time in years, she wasn't shrinking into the background. She was part of something bigger, and this time it was hers. 6 months had passed since she left. In that time, Emily had built a life that was unrecognizable compared to the one she'd escaped. Her new apartment overlooked the city skyline. Her desk at work had her name engraved on a sleek gold plate, Emily Harris, project manager. She had worked tirelessly, earning respect not through noise, but through quiet excellence. Her co-workers admired her calm strength. Her boss trusted her decisions. And when she laughed now, it was real, not forced, not filtered for approval, but the past had a way of circling back, especially when people realized what they had lost. It started with a letter. Handwritten, shaky. The return address, her mother's house. Emily almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. Inside was a short note. Emily, things at home have gotten worse. Carla lost the house. Tyler dropped out. We haven't heard from you in months. I know I've failed you in many ways, but I miss you, sweetheart. Please come by, even just once. Love, Mom. The words hit harder than she expected. Despite everything, her heart tightened. For all the pain they'd caused, she still missed her mother's voice, the one that once hummed lullabies when she was little. Days passed before she made a decision. One Sunday morning, she packed a small overnight bag and drove back to her hometown. The drive felt strange. Familiar roads, familiar signs. But everything looked smaller now, almost fragile. When she pulled up to her mother's house, the paint was chipped, the yard overgrown. She hesitated before knocking. Her mother opened the door. Her once proud posture was slumped, her hair grayer than Emily remembered. The woman who had once scolded her for being too emotional now looked like someone who'd finally run out of control. Emily? Her mother whispered, her eyes welling up. You came, Emily nodded softly. Hi, Mom. Inside, the house felt heavy with silence. The air carried the faint smell of dust and cold coffee. Carla was there too, sitting on the couch, her eyes red, her expensive clothes replaced by a worn sweatshirt. Tyler was slouched beside her, scrolling through his phone, thinner and quieter than before. Carla looked up, startled. Emily? I didn't think you'd actually— I got Mom's letter, Emily said evenly. I wanted to make sure she was okay. Carla tried to smile, but guilt tugged at her expression. Listen, about everything that happened, I was horrible to you. We all were. I don't even know why you'd bother to see us after— Because I'm not you, Emily interrupted, her tone calm but firm. And I don't hold on to hate. But I also don't forget. Carla's eyes flickered with shame. You have every right to hate me. Emily looked around. The faded wallpaper, the broken photo frames, the same table where her cake once sat. No, she said quietly. I don't hate you. I pity you, her mother began to cry softly. We should have protected you that night. I saw everything. I heard him. I should have said something. Emily's eyes softened. You could have. But you didn't. That's what hurt the most. Tyler finally looked up from his phone. I'm sorry, he muttered, barely audible. She studied him, the same boy who'd once grinned as he threw her cake on the floor. Now, he couldn't even hold her gaze. Do you even know what that moment did to me? She asked gently. You thought it was funny, but it broke something in me. And maybe that's what I needed. Because breaking made me rebuild. He didn't answer, just nodded shamefully. Emily sat for a moment in the same living room where she'd once been humiliated. But this time she wasn't small. She wasn't begging to be seen. She was calm, composed, the kind of strength that comes from surviving what others never apologize for. Carla wiped her eyes. You look happy. You really do. I am, Emily said softly. And it has nothing to do with money or success. It's because I learned that peace doesn't come from family approval. It comes from choosing yourself. Her mother reached out and took her hand, tentative, fragile. Can you ever forgive us? Emily thought for a long moment. I already did, she said. But forgiveness isn't a bridge. It's closure. She stood up, smoothing her coat. I have to go. I have a flight back in the morning, Carla's voice cracked. Will we ever see you again? Emily hesitated at the door. That depends on who you all decide to be when I'm gone. Outside, the air smelled like rain. As she walked to her car, she heard faint voices behind her, her mother's sobs. Carla whispering to Tyler, but Emily didn't look back. At the edge of the driveway, she turned to glance at the house one last time. It wasn't home anymore. It was a memory, faded and heavy, one she could finally let rest. Back in Chicago, life moved on. Her promotion went through. Her company featured her in a magazine piece about women in leadership. When the article came out, people from her past, classmates, old neighbors, sent messages of congratulations. One night, as she scrolled through her inbox, she saw Carla's name again. This time it wasn't a plea. I saw the article. You deserve every bit of it. I hope someday Tyler learns from you. You're stronger than we ever gave you credit for. I'm proud of you, Emily. Emily smiled faintly, not out of satisfaction but peace, because this was what true victory looked like. Not revenge, not proving anyone wrong, just living so fully, so confidently, that no one could ever make her feel small again. The morning light spilled gently through the glass windows of Emily's apartment, painting soft gold on the hardwood floors. The city stretched wide and alive beneath her, a far cry from the suffocating walls she'd once called home. For years, she had carried the ache of her family's betrayal like a shadow. Now it was just a story she'd learned from, not a wound she bled from. She brewed herself a cup of coffee and looked at the framed photo on her counter, her college graduation picture. The one she had taken alone after her family stormed off in embarrassment. She used to hate that photo. She used to think it symbolized loneliness, but now she saw something else, resilience. Her phone buzzed. A message from Carla. Mom's not well. The doctors say it's her heart. She keeps asking for you. For a long moment, Emily just stood still. The words carried weight, not the manipulative guilt of the past, but something real. She took a deep breath. She knew this moment would come eventually, and she'd already decided what she would do when it did. 2 days later, Emily was back in that small town. The hospital room was dim, the rhythmic beep of machines filling the silence. Her mother lay frail and pale against the white sheets, eyes fluttering open as Emily entered. "Emily?" her mother whispered, voice trembling. "You came." Emily set down a small bouquet of lilies, her mother's favorite. "Of course I did." Tears slipped down her mother's cheeks. "I've spent years thinking about what I did to you, or didn't do." "You didn't deserve any of it." Emily pulled a chair closer and sat beside her. "I know," she said softly. "And I also know that you loved me. You just didn't know how to show it." Her mother reached for her hand, the same hand she had once brushed away when Emily needed comfort. "You've become everything I wanted to be," she murmured. Emily smiled faintly. "No, Mom, I became what I needed to be." A quiet peace settled between them, the kind that comes only after too many years of noise. There were no dramatic apologies, no grand emotional speeches. Just two people sitting in the truth of what they'd lost and what little they could still mend. A week later, her mother passed away in her sleep. Carla and Tyler stood beside Emily at the funeral, not as enemies, but as people finally stripped of pretense. The wind rustled through the trees as Emily laid a white rose on the casket. She didn't cry. Not because she felt nothing, but because she'd already grieved years ago, back when she realized her family had chosen cruelty over love. This moment wasn't about mourning. It was about release. After the service, Carla approached her quietly. "Thank you for coming," she said. Her voice was sincere, small. "You didn't have to." "I know," Emily replied, "but I wanted to. It's the last thing I could do, right?" Carla nodded, wiping her eyes. "Tyler's trying to turn things around. He's taking classes again. He told me it's because of you, that seeing you made him realize how far he'd fallen." Emily looked toward the horizon, where the sunlight broke through a line of gray clouds. "Good. Everyone deserves a second chance. But it's up to him to take it." There was a pause, one that didn't feel heavy anymore. Carla looked at her sister, truly seeing her for the first time. You really are different, Emily. Emily smiled softly. I'm finally myself. Back in Chicago, the pace of life resumed. Her work continued to thrive, her circle of friends grew, and she began mentoring younger women at her company. Women who reminded her of her old self, quiet, underestimated, and full of untapped strength. One evening, after a long day at work, she walked along the pier, her coat fluttering in the cool breeze. She stopped near the edge, watching the city lights shimmer against the water. She thought about all the years she'd wasted trying to earn love that should have been freely given. About how her family had taught her, painfully, what self-worth truly meant. And she realized something profound. Closure isn't something you receive. It's something you create. She took out her phone and opened her notes app, typing a simple line. You don't heal by proving them wrong. You heal by proving to yourself that you were never broken. She saved it, not for anyone else, but as a reminder of her own journey. As she stood there, wind brushing against her hair, Emily felt completely at peace. The girl who once picked up cake crumbs off the floor, humiliated and voiceless,